They say if you walk near the royal palace of Ebuloko at night, you can still hear the cries of girls who vanished without a trace. Their voices live in the wind, warning all who dare to listen. Long ago, across the sunburned plains and golden hills of an ancient land, there stood a kingdom feared by all its neighbors. This was Ebuloko, a land where the rivers flowed with riches, the soil grew yam thick as a warrior's thigh, and the people once sang as they harvested under the gaze of kind gods. But those days were ashes. Atop the black mountain of Mutungu, where the clouds bowed low like frightened servants, sat a palace carved of obsidian and gold. Its towers clawed at the sky. That palace belonged to none other than King Zuberi, the most feared ruler the continent had ever known. Zuberi was not born a king. He was made by blood, bone, and betrayal. No one knew exactly when he rose to power, but once he took the throne, he ruled like a hungry lion guarding a stolen kill. His people whispered his name only in shadows. To them, he was not a man, he was a storm that never passed. They called him Zuberi the Devourer. His rule stretched over 14 provinces, from the drumming coasts of Nakala to the burning sands of Barumba. But no land trembled more than the central province of Iganza, where the palace stood. That was where the darkness was strongest. Zuberi had 200 wives, some older than trees, others barely past childhood, but his appetite knew no end. Power made his stomach growl like thunder, and what fed his power was not armies, nor taxes. It was something far more sinister. Every season, on the night of the third moon, the king's guards rode out on black horses with red spears. Their mission? To collect the pure. Girls who had not yet known the touch of a man. The ritual was called the Calling of the Blossoms. When the riders came, drums would beat like war cries in the villages. Mothers would hide their daughters, in basins, pits, or even inside termite mounds. But Zuberi's men were trained like hounds. They sniffed out fear. They turned over huts, burned crops, and dragged girls from beneath beds like demons from nightmares. Girls as young as 12 rainy seasons were tied together by their wrists with ropes made from goat hide and marched barefoot to the capital. No one could stop it. Not chiefs, not priests, not even fathers with cutlasses in their hands. Any man who dared resist would vanish by sunrise. His bones would be found days later in the river, picked clean by crocodiles. In the capital, under the glare of a scorching sun, the chosen stood in a courtyard paved with polished skulls. Their feet blistered, their lips cracked. Around them stood guards with leopard skin armor and spears sharper than regret. And there, seated high above them all, on a throne carved from black lionstone, sat King Zuberi. His eyes were narrow slits, like a snake watching its prey. His skin shone like oil, and his beard was plaited with bones. Behind him stood his council, priests, torturers, scribes, all silent, all waiting. The girls were made to line up. Zuberi would rise slowly, dragging his fingers along the arms of his throne as if savoring every moment. One by one he inspected them. He would lift their chins, touch their cheeks, force them to spin as if they were no more than livestock at a market. Sometimes he smiled, but that smile, it chilled the blood. It was the smile of a man who believed the world owed him everything. Once selected, the girls were dressed in red veils that covered their faces. They were taken into the palace, and none were seen again. Not one. No one knew what happened to them behind those doors. Only screams echoed at night, and the smell of burning herbs filled the air. But the truth was far darker than anyone could imagine. Deep beneath the palace, hidden behind stone walls and guarded by curses older than time, there was a shrine, a place of sacrificial shadows. It was there that King Zuberi knelt to a forbidden god, one the ancestors had buried long ago. The god's name was Bashikra, a spirit of endless hunger. It had given Zuberi power, the strength of 10 men, riches that flowed like rivers, and the fear of 1,000 villages. But the price was purity. Each moon Bashikra demanded a fresh offering, a soul untouched, innocent, blooming. Without it, Zuberi would rot, his skin would peel, his blood would boil, and his kingdom would crumble like old termite clay. So the ritual continued, moon after moon, girl after girl. The villages emptied, The people grew hollow. Beauty became a curse and youth a sentence, until one day, a girl named Nia was chosen. Nia, the daughter of a village ironsmith from the humble hamlet of Toba. She was fire wrapped in skin. While others stitched cloth or fetched water, Nia trained with her father in the forge. She knew the weight of iron, the heat of flame. She did not dream of marriage, she dreamed of freedom. When the king's messengers came, Nia's family wept. Her father, Django, tried to hide her beneath the smithy. But the guards were like termites. They found every crack. They took her, tied her, marched her with the others. On the day of the calling, she stood among dozens of trembling girls. Dust clung to her skin. Her lips were dry, but her eyes burned with defiance. When King Zuberi reached her in the line, he paused. Her head was held high. She did not lower her gaze. She did not shake. She stood like an uncut diamond among river stones. Zuberi leaned in, his breath heavy with perfume and rot. "You are not like the others," he murmured. "I am not yours," she said, her voice sharp as a blacksmith's blade. The courtyard gasped. A guard stepped forward, but Zuberi raised a hand. His smile faded. "Do you know who I am?" he asked. "I know what you are," she replied. "A thief of lives." The silence was thunder. The guards gripped their spears, waiting for the order. But Zuberi did not give it. Instead, he turned slowly and sat back on his throne. "Take her," he said coldly. "Let her learn silence in the chambers." Nia was dragged away. Her father's scream echoed in her ears, but she did not weep. Inside her chest, something ancient stirred. Not fear, not despair, rebellion. The wind howled through the palace rafters, like spirits mourning the dead. Outside, the night sky was ink-black, scattered, with stars too afraid to shine. The air inside the palace was heavy, thick like the breath of something watching. Nia sat alone in the golden chamber the king had given her, a room more beautiful than any she had imagined, and yet it felt colder than death itself. Silk curtains hung like funeral veils. Carvings of lion heads stared down from the walls. The bed beneath her creaked with every breath she took, but she could not sleep. She would not. Her fingers clutched the edge of her wrapper, knuckles white, chest tight with the storm building inside her. The silence was sharp, not peaceful, but dangerous. She knew something lived beneath it, something that waited. Then the door creaked. A tall figure stepped in, wrapped in flowing maroon robes that whispered against the floor. Her hair was braided with beads dulled by time, and her eyes were wells of sorrow. "I am Queen Zalika," the woman said softly. "The first wife and the last hope." Nia stood slowly, unsure whether to fear or trust. "You're one of his wives." Zalika nodded. "I was once his light. Now I walk in his shadow." The young girl studied her face, lined by age, shaped by heartbreak. Zalika was regal, even in grief. "He sent you?" Nia asked, unsure. "No," Zalika replied, her voice a tremor wrapped in strength. "I came because you did what no girl has dared in years. You looked him in the eye, you called him thief." Nia's voice was low. "Because he is." Zalika stepped closer, the flickering candlelight catching the sheen of a tear she refused to let fall. "He was not always this way," she whispered. "When Zuberi was crowned, he vowed to lift Ebuloko to glory. He was kind, fierce but just, until the day he found the shrine beneath the palace and the god within it." "Bashikra," Nia breathed. Zalika's eyes widened. "You know the name?" "I heard it in the silence. I don't know how, but I did." The queen touched her chest, eyes closed as if the name wounded her. "He made a pact," she said, voice breaking. "He was desperate to keep the kingdom powerful, so he gave Bashikra what it craved, purity. I was the first. The ritual, it bound him to darkness. I thought love could save him. I was wrong." "Why tell me now?" Nia asked. "You've lived with this for years." Zalika leaned in, her voice sharp as the edge of a blade. "Because the darkness is growing, and you are not like the others. You are fire, you are storm. If you will fight, I will help you." Nia's heart pounded. Her voice was steady. "Tell me what I must do." A pause. Then the queen spoke, like one confessing to the gods. "The source of his power lies beneath the throne, a chamber carved, before memory lit by eternal flame. There on a pedestal of bone rests the heart of Bashikra, a black vessel that pulses with stolen purity. If we destroy it, Zuberi's power dies with it." Nia's eyes narrowed. "Why haven't you done it before?" Zalika's voice cracked. "Because I was afraid. Because I hoped the man I loved might return. But now I know. Zuberi is gone." "Only the demon wears his skin." Nia stepped forward, placing her hand on Zalika's arm. "Then let's burn the monster." The queen nodded, and for the first time in decades, hope touched her lips. They waited. The palace slowly sank into slumber. The guards, drunk from palm wine and arrogance, dozed in corners. The wives slept with one eye open. The wind outside cried like a warning. But inside, two women moved like shadows. Zalika led the way, her fingers brushing the walls, guiding them through hidden passages known only to queens and ghosts. The corridors were narrow, lined with old carvings of long-forgotten rulers. Dust danced in the moonlight that slipped through the cracks. "Watch your step," Zalika whispered. "The palace is older than truth." Their bare feet made no sound. Nia's heart beat like a festival drum. Fear walked beside her, but it did not lead her. They reached the grand hall, a vast space cloaked in darkness, lit only by the soft glow of enchanted fireflies that clung to the high rafters. At its center sat the black throne, the seat of kings, forged from stone dragged from the mountain of bones, polished with oil and blood. It loomed like a predator. "This is where it begins," Zalika said, kneeling before the throne. She pressed her palm against a small unmarked groove beneath the seat. For a breathless moment, nothing happened. Then the ground shook, the throne rumbled and slid back, revealing a staircase that spiraled into pitch-black nothingness. A foul wind rose from the opening, thick with the smell of ash and old sorrow. "Once we go down," Zalika warned, "there is no turning back." "I already turned my back on fear," Nia replied. "Lead me." They descended, each step drawing them deeper into the belly of evil. The air grew thick, the light faded, and the walls. Oh, the walls whispered, not words, not songs, but memories, cries, sobs, the voices of the lost. Nia clenched her fists. They reached the bottom, a wide, circular chamber, its floor carved with symbols that shifted when looked at too long. At the center stood the vessel. It was a black, bulbous object, pulsing like a heartbeat. Shadows clung to it, faces rippled across its surface, girls, mothers, elders, trapped in eternal screams. Zalika faltered, "We must destroy it." But before they could move, a sound like a lion's roar echoed from above. A voice deep and wrathful shook the stones. "So this is how my queen and my little flower betray me?" They turned. At the top of the stairs stood King Zuberi, cloaked in dark robes, his eyes glowing like molten coals, and his staff crackling with energy that hissed like vipers. "You thought I would not know?" he bellowed, descending slowly. "You think I do not feel every tremble in my palace, every breath in its walls?" Nia stood firm, the pendant Zalika gave her clenched in her hand. "Your reign ends tonight." He laughed, not with humor but hunger. "You cannot kill what the gods protect." Zalika stepped forward, trembling but steady. "The gods do not protect you, Zuberi. You serve a beast, and that beast has feasted enough." "Do not speak of things you cannot grasp, wife," he snarled. "I speak as one who loved you," she said, voice breaking, "and I speak as the woman who will bury you." The chamber shook. Nia stood firm, sweat streaking. Her brow, fists clenched tight as iron. Her voice rose over the chaos, bold and sharp. "You've stolen lives, you've broken our spirits, but tonight we take everything back." The king sneered, baring yellowed teeth. Bold words, for a girl still bleeding innocence. He raised his staff. A surge of energy crackled from its tip blacker than midnight, and with a thunderous roar he hurled it toward them. "Move!" Zalika shouted. Nia didn't hesitate. She shoved the queen aside just in time, the bolt striking the ground with a deafening blast. Stone shattered, fire erupted, dust filled the air. Coughing, Nia turned, grabbing Zalika's hand. "We have to reach the vessel." Zalika's face was pale, streaked with ash. Her voice trembled. "He wasn't always like this." The words slipped out, fragile like glass. Nia paused only a moment, eyes wide. "What?" Zalika turned to her, voice breaking. "He was kind once, gentle. When we ruled together, he spoke of growing orchards, feeding the hungry, building libraries with walls of wisdom." She looked away, her eyes filled with tears. "Then he found the vessel." "And I—" Nia ducked as another bolt screamed past. "What do you mean?" she yelled, pulling her behind a fallen column. "I was the first," Zalika sobbed, "the first to bleed for his power. I gave him my purity, willingly. I thought I was saving the kingdom." Nia's heart clenched. "Zalika. It was I who awakened his hunger. The power promised greatness, but it only fed greed. After that, he changed. He turned cold, possessed. I tried to stop him, but he pushed me aside." Another explosion rocked the room. Sparks flew. "No more," Nia growled, voice steel. "We finish what you started." The queen stared at her, at the fire in her eyes, the strength in her spine, and she knew this girl had become the storm. Zuberi's voice echoed again, thunderous. "You think you can undo what I've built in blood?" He descended the stairs like a god of ruin, his form growing with every step. The shrine behind him pulsed, its surface crawling with faces of those sacrificed, their mouths open, screaming silently. Nia spotted the vessel, now glowing crimson, its energy trembling, unstable. "Now!" she shouted. Zalika broke from cover and ran toward it, robes billowing like a phoenix's wings. But the king saw. With a roar, he summoned the vessel itself. It lifted from the pedestal, swirling in the air like a trapped star. He hurled it with all the hatred of centuries. Time slowed. Nia screamed, "Zalika!" The queen turned just in time, her eyes locked on Nia's, full of sorrow and peace. "Forgive me," she whispered, and she stepped into the vessel's path. It struck her chest with a soundless burst. The room exploded in a blinding light. A shriek tore through the air, deep, eternal. Darkness flooded from the queen's body as the vessel cracked, then shattered into 1,000 pieces. Zalika screamed and began to disintegrate. But even as her body turned to ash, her hand reached out, and with the last of her strength she seized the king. "If I die," she said through clenched teeth, "you die with me." Zuberi screamed, struggling, twisting, but her grip held. The shadows swirled, the flames screamed. And then, silence. The room was empty. Ashes floated in the air like feathers in mourning. The vessel lay in ruins, black shards humming with fading energy. The shrine was gone. The faces, gone. The power, gone. And Nia stood alone. The silence pressed against her ears. Her body trembled. Her knees threatened to give. She dropped to the ground, panting, staring at the place where they had vanished. Zalika gone, Zuberi gone. The war was over. But the price. Oh, the price. She let herself cry just for a moment, not out of fear, not out of regret, but in memory, in respect, for all the girls lost, for all the years stolen, for a queen who once loved and then chose to burn to set others free. But she could not stay on the floor. There were still girls in cages, still villagers waiting, in fear, still chains to break. She stood and climbed the stairs. The palace was eerily quiet. The guards were gone, vanished, scattered, dead. The torches flickered with confused flames, uncertain whom to serve. Nia pushed open the great doors to the courtyard. Dozens of girls stood huddled in silence, their red veils like blood-stained flowers. They looked up, eyes wide with terror, as the doors creaked open. Nia stepped forward, dirt-streaked, blood-speckled, glowing with something ancient. "The king is dead," she said, her voice cutting through the night. "You are free." Silence. And then sobs. screams, shouts of disbelief. Some girls fell to the ground in relief. Others ran to each other. One, no older than 11, clutched Naya's leg and wept. The news spread like wildfire. Within hours, the palace gates opened, and villagers poured in. They came barefoot, with torches, babies, drums, and tears. They saw the throne broken in half. They saw the ashes where Zuberi once stood, and they saw Nia standing tall beneath the dawn. Django, Nia's father, rushed forward, falling to his knees, wrapping her in his arms. "You brought down the mountain," he whispered. "No," she said, eyes on the horizon. "We did, all of us." That morning the sun rose not in silence but with song. The drums of Ebuloko thundered not in fear but in joy. Women braided each other's hair in peace. Elders wept for the daughters who never returned and planted trees in their names. Nia walked the length of the palace, stripping it of its jewels, burning the silken tapestries and smashing every statue that bore Zuberi's face. In the throne room, she gathered the pieces of the vessel and buried them beneath a mound of earth, far from the palace, far from power. Over the grave, she placed a stone. On it, she carved with her father's chisel, "Here lies the end of fear and the beginning of truth." The people crowned Nia not with a title, but with honor. She refused to take the throne. "The throne is just a seat," she told them, "but the people are the kingdom." Instead, she helped form a council of women, elders, farmers, and warriors, so that no single voice would ever rise above the rest again. And so the land healed. Ebuloko bloomed. Children sang in the fields. Rivers laughed again. The drums told stories of fire and freedom, of a queen who gave everything, and a girl who became a lioness. At night, when the moon cast silver across the hills, Nia would walk the courtyard where it all began. She would sit beneath the broken throne and remember. She would whisper the name Zalika like a prayer. A promise, a vow, that no one else would ever be silenced again. When fear becomes tradition, courage must become rebellion. No matter how strong darkness grows, it only takes one brave heart, like Nia's, to spark a fire that sets a people free. True power does not lie in crowns or thrones. It lies in truth, sacrifice, and unity. If this story touched your spirit and stirred your soul, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful African tales that awaken history, honor our ancestors, and inspire tomorrow. Until next time, and stay brave, stay wise, and let your voice rise like the drum.